It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. Two newlyweds, madly in love, jet off to a private island in the South Pacific to celebrate their dream honeymoon. White sand beaches, crystal blue water, total paradise. But just days into their getaway, something goes terribly wrong. On a routine scuba diving excursion, the bride Tina Watson sinks beneath the waves and never resurfaces alive. Her husband? He swims away unharmed. And what happens next spirals into one of the most haunting, divisive, and debated tourist death cases in modern history. This is the story of Tina Watson's tragic honeymoon death in Australia's Great Barrier Reef, and the chilling mystery that still surrounds it. Welcome back to Deadly Destinations. Tina Watson was 26 years old, a kind-hearted woman from Helena, Alabama, bright, deeply religious, and a newlywed just starting what should have been the happiest chapter of her life. She had recently married 27-year-old Gabe Watson, her college sweetheart. Gabe worked as a bubble wrap delivery man and had a well-documented passion for scuba diving. He was a certified rescue diver with dozens of log dives. Tina? Not so much. She had only recently completed her open water certification. She was still uncomfortable with deep water, and she had a medical history that complicated matters, specifically an arrhythmia and mitral valve prolapse, a condition that causes the heart's valve to malfunction under stress. But despite those risks, the couple planned a dive trip on their honeymoon to the SS Yongala, one of Australia's most famous and notoriously dangerous dive sites. October 22, 2003. Gabe and Tina boarded the Spoil Sport, a dive boat operated by Mike Ball Dive Expeditions. The boat took them 48 kilometers off the coast of Townsville to the resting place of the Yongala shipwreck, a ghostly iron skeleton that lies about 100 feet beneath the surface. The wreck had no safety lines, no cages, and strong underwater currents that could easily sweep divers off course. It was considered too advanced for beginners, and many experts now believe Tina never should have been in the water that day. The couple entered the water after the other divers. Witnesses say they seemed nervous, particularly Tina. Just 90 seconds into the dive, things went sideways. Gabe would later tell authorities that Tina was panicking. She was having trouble with her buoyancy, wasn't equalizing her ears, and appeared to be in distress. According to his version of events, he tried to hold her and help, but she suddenly knocked his mask and regulator loose. While he recovered, she sank rapidly out of sight. Instead of chasing her down or calling for help, Gabe resurfaced. Divers below soon spotted Tina, lying lifeless on the seafloor, arms extended upward as if reaching for help. They rushed to her, pulled her up, and began CPR on the dive boat. But it was already too late. Tina Watson was dead just 11 days into her marriage. At first, authorities assumed the tragedy was just a heartbreaking accident involving an inexperienced diver with an underlying heart condition. But in the days that followed, things stopped adding up. For one, several eyewitnesses began questioning Gabe's behavior during and after the dive. Other divers reported that when he surfaced, he didn't seem panicked or even particularly concerned. One crew member recalled that Gabe calmly stated, "My wife's on the bottom," and when asked to help rescue her, he refused to re-enter the water. Then came the unsettling details from the dive company. Just one day before Tina's death, Gabe had asked odd, specific questions. How long it takes for someone to drown underwater, where the emergency oxygen was stored, and whether the dive would have safety divers present. He also inquired whether Tina's inexperience would disqualify her from diving the Yongala. But instead of pulling her from the dive, he insisted she could handle it. Investigators soon discovered even more disturbing information. Gabe had convinced Tina to take out a life insurance policy before the wedding, naming him as sole beneficiary for a payout of $130,000. He also pushed for her father to transfer her travel insurance into his name. Tina had reportedly expressed discomfort about these requests, but went along with them. When the autopsy results came in, the case took another dark turn. Despite her heart condition, Tina had not suffered a heart attack. Her cause of death was listed as drowning, but the details were strange. Her dive weights were missing, making her positively buoyant, meaning she would have floated, not sunk, without deliberate effort or intervention, and her regulator had been dislodged, making it impossible to breathe underwater. Gabe claimed she'd knocked it loose in panic, but forensic dive experts disagreed. One expert testified that the chances of Tina's mask and regulator coming off by accident at that depth were extremely slim. Investigators began to suspect something far worse than negligence: a staged underwater murder. After nearly 5 years of back and forth between U.S. and Australian authorities, Gabe Watson was finally charged in 2008 with manslaughter by gross negligence under Queensland law. In 2009, he returned voluntarily to Australia to face the charges, where he entered a guilty plea not to murder, but to failing in his duty of care as her dive buddy. His sentence? Just 12 months in prison. After serving only 18 months, Gabe was deported back to the U.S. To Tina's family, it felt like justice had been sold out for convenience. Her father, Tommy Thomas, told the media, "We believe this was a cold, calculated murder." And in Alabama, prosecutors agreed. In 2010, Gabe was charged again, this time with capital murder, on the grounds that the murder had been premeditated in Alabama and executed overseas. The trial began in 2012 with prosecutors arguing that Gabe had married Tina for financial gain and murdered her to collect the insurance money. They reenacted the underwater scene, brought in dive experts, and played interviews showing inconsistencies in Gabe's story. But there was a problem. No eyewitnesses and no forensic evidence conclusively proving murder. The defense argued that Tina panicked, possibly due to her medical history, and that Gabe simply made poor decisions in a stressful situation. Ultimately, the jury sided with the defense. Gabe Watson was acquitted of all charges. To this day, Tina Watson's death remains one of the most debated tourist tragedies of the 21st century. Her family continues to speak out, maintaining that Gabe orchestrated her death and manipulated the system. They set up public memorials in Tina's honor and have fought to keep her story from fading away. As for Gabe, he moved back to Alabama. He remarried in 2008, just 5 years after Tina's death, and has largely stayed out of the public eye. In an interview years later, he maintained his innocence, saying, "If I could change places with Tina, I would." But for those who knew her, and for many in the diving and true crime communities, questions still linger. Why didn't Gabe follow her down? Why didn't he call for help immediately? And why did so many details line up just a little too perfectly? In the end, we may never know exactly what happened 100 feet below the surface that day. What we do know is that a young bride, full of life and dreams for the future, never made it back from her honeymoon. And the man she trusted the most stood just feet away and walked away untouched. Vacations are meant to be the happiest moments of our lives, but sometimes paradise hides something darker. This was the story of Tina Watson, the bride who died in the deep, and a reminder that when you're far from home, surrounded by beauty, you still have to ask, who can you really trust? Thanks for watching Deadly Destinations. If you found this story disturbing or thought-provoking, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And remember, not all who wander are lost, but some never return.